The moment the car door slammed shut behind me, I froze under Minnesota's storm-dark sky. Steam rose off the hot asphalt. A sharp, oily smell mixed with leftover engine fumes in the air. Seconds earlier, the silver Mercedes had taken a hard turn, leaving only the screech of tires on wet pavement. In that instant, a cold thought crossed my mind. The man who promised to protect me had just left me stranded nearly 40 miles from home. The first gust of the coming storm slapped wet cold against my skin like a whip. Lightning tore the sky in the distance, flashing off the broken glass of the abandoned rest stop. The old wooden boards covering the windows rattled, sounding like a trapped beast. I pulled my thin coat tight and felt tiny in the wide open space as darkness started to swallow everything. Out here in the Midwest, people tell stories about endless highways. If your car breaks down or you're left behind, you might walk for hours before you see a lighted house. Tonight, I was the main character in that story. All I could hear were insects chirping and my own heart pounding, with thunder rolling from the horizon. Right then I knew this wasn't just a married couple's fight. It was deliberate humiliation. It was a lesson Ethan, the perfect-looking husband, wanted to teach me. He wanted me to curl up, shake, find my way back, and come home shattered at dawn, ready to apologize just to be forgiven. But he was wrong. The moment his headlights disappeared past the trees, I slid my hand into my coat and touched the phone in my pocket, the phone that had been quietly recording every word he said. In the dark, I smiled. Ethan thought he'd written my script. He didn't know I'd prepared a different one. This rainy night would be the start of his undoing. My name is Clara Mitchell, 34 years old, born and raised in Minneapolis, the city wrapped in deep blue lakes and endless winters. I used to love the feeling of driving down streets covered in white snow, past warm, glowing wooden houses along the road. Back then, my life looked like a peaceful picture, a steady job in finance, a small family on the path to happiness, and friends who believed I had it all. The man I married is Ethan Mitchell, a familiar name in Minnesota's fund management circle. With his perfectly tailored suits, confident smile, and that way of making everyone feel heard, people saw him as the model husband everyone dreamed of. At fancy parties near Lake of the Isles, Ethan was always the center of attention. Next to him, I was simply the gentle wife, dressed elegantly, smiling right on cue. What most people didn't know is that before I met Ethan, I had my own career. I was a financial advisor at an investment firm, managing portfolios worth tens of millions. I loved it, the numbers, the reports, the rush of finding strategies that made clients money. But after we got married, Ethan started planting little seeds in my head. Things that sounded harmless at first. You should quit and focus on family. I make enough for both of us. You're just tiring yourself out. At first, I thought it was care. Until I realized he wanted me to walk away from everything, so I'd depend completely on him. We lived in a 2-story house in Edina, where maple trees turned fiery red every fall. The house was spacious, the lawn always trimmed neat, with a perfect white picket fence. From the outside, it looked like the suburban dream couples longed for. But inside, the air grew heavier each day. Ethan tracked every electric bill, every grocery I bought at Whole Foods. He'd smile kindly at neighbors, then turn around and scold me for being wasteful because I bought a fresh bouquet for the dining table. I have an older brother, Noah Harper. He used to be a cop, now he runs a private security firm. He lived close by, and he was the first to see through Ethan's control. Noah once told me, "Clara, he's not protecting you. He's locking you inside his golden cage." Back then, I brushed it off, thought my brother was just being paranoid. Looking back, I wish I'd listened sooner. Because behind that perfect husband image, Ethan was building a world where only he held power. And me, the woman who used to be confident and independent, was slowly turning into nothing but a shadow of myself. The day we got married, I thought I was the luckiest woman in the world. The wedding was held by Lake Harriet, the wind rushing through the trees, the sunset painting gold across the water. Ethan held my hand and promised me forever in front of our family and friends. Everyone said we were the perfect couple, a successful man and a smart, graceful woman. For the first few years, he kept up that image. Every anniversary, he'd book a table at Morton Steakhouse, raise a glass of red wine, and say, "We're building a future worth dreaming of." And I believed him. I believed in the suburban house with a white picket fence, the luxury getaways in Florida, the weekend nights when friends gathered in our living room, Ethan telling stories about the stock market while I set out appetizers. It looked like a picture-perfect Christmas card, but that perfection came at a price. Day by day, I started to realize Ethan's sweet concern felt more like a rope tightening around my neck. He never banned me outright, but his gentle reminders slowly turned into commands. When I wanted to take on a big project at my old firm, he said, "That job will drain you. What about family time?" When I bought a new dress, he'd say, "I think you're most beautiful in something simple. No need to waste money." At first, I nodded, thinking it was care. But those moments of care soon became fights. I remember one October afternoon, red maple leaves covering the yard. I wanted to invite my mom over for dinner. Ethan shrugged. "Your mom stresses me out. She always asks awkward questions. Don't invite her." And just like that, I stayed quiet and dropped it. A few months later, I noticed my friends were disappearing too. Coffee dates canceled at the last minute because Ethan wants me home. Emails from old coworkers left unanswered because he said, "They're just using you." I started feeling lonely inside that big two-story house that should have been filled with laughter. Ethan, on the other hand, only shined brighter out in the world. He climbed the career ladder, landed on the cover of local business magazines, gave speeches at investment conferences. Every time he came home, he carried an aura that made me both proud and small at the same time. And he used it. At parties, he'd wrap an arm around me and laugh. "Without Clara, I wouldn't be here today." But once the door shut, his tone cut sharp. "You don't understand the real world. Stay out of money matters. Let me handle it." I used to think if I stayed quiet, things would settle. I believed every marriage required a little compromise, and if I gave up some freedom, I could keep the peace. But I was wrong. The more I gave, the more Ethan wanted. And me, the independent woman I once was, slowly faded into nothing but a shadow in my own life. That night started out like a romantic evening. We were celebrating our anniversary at Morton Steakhouse in downtown Minneapolis. The place was packed, warm golden lights glowing off the glasses of red wine. I sat across from Ethan, watching him order a bottle of Cabernet that cost nearly $800 without even blinking. He lifted his glass, clinked it against mine, and smiled like the whole world fit right in the palm of his hand. But then, right in the middle of dinner, I slipped and asked, "Ethan, where did the 10 grand in our joint account go?" I hadn't meant it as an interrogation. I just wanted a simple answer. But his smile died instantly. His cold eyes flashed with irritation. He set his glass down so hard the wine rippled over the rim. 3 hours later, we were driving out of the city. I can't even remember how long that road felt, just that the streetlights thinned out, then vanished completely as we turned onto a highway cutting through farmland. Cornfields stretched on both sides, only the pale moonlight and the smell of damp earth after rain filling the night. The Mercedes rolled into an abandoned rest stop. Windows boarded up with old planks, weeds breaking through cracks in the concrete. No other cars. No sound except the wind whistling through rusted signs. Ethan didn't turn off the engine. He stared straight ahead, his voice cold. "Get out, Clara." I turned to him, stunned. "What did you just say?" "You need a lesson. Walk home. 37 miles. Maybe that'll teach you who really manages the money in this family." My throat tightened. Part of me wanted to scream, to grab the wheel. But another part, the calm, careful part I'd been preparing for the last 8 months, kept me still. The phone in my coat pocket was recording every single word. All I had to do was stay steady. I took a long breath and opened the door. The cold air hit my face, the smell of gas and oil carried on the wind. Behind me, Ethan called out, "Smart choice. Maybe by the time you drag yourself back to the front door, You'll remember your place in this family." I stood there, watching the taillights of the Mercedes disappear around the bend, leaving me with nothing but darkness and the storm rolling in. Above, the sky cracked open with a streak of lightning, followed by thunder that shook the ground. The first drops of rain fell, heavy and icy. I counted to 60, just to be sure he was gone. Then I turned and walked quickly toward the shadows behind the old gas station. And there, just like we planned, Noah's black pickup was waiting. The headlights blinked twice our signal. My brother stepped out, holding an umbrella and a steaming thermos of coffee. "Did you get it all?" he asked. I nodded, pulling out my phone. Every word. He just told me I need to remember my place. Noah's jaw clenched, fury flashing in his eyes. 3 years of him controlling you was already too much. But this, he pointed into the night where the Mercedes had vanished. "This is a crime. And tomorrow morning, the world's gonna know who he really is." I wrapped my hands around the coffee cup, its heat chasing the tremors in my fingers. The rain hammered the rusted roof above us, drumming like a warning. In that moment, I knew tonight wasn't the end. It was the beginning. A lot of people who saw me standing there, shaking in the rain that night, probably thought I was just a helpless wife. But the truth was far from that. 8 months earlier, I already knew this day would come. And I had prepared for it step by step, detail by detail, so carefully that even Ethan, the man who thought he controlled everything, had no idea. It all started in the spring, when I stumbled across strange withdrawals from our joint account. At first, just a few $1,000s, then 10,000. When I asked, Ethan gave me that cold smile and said, "I handle the money. You just focus on the house." But I wasn't naive anymore. The instincts of a financial advisor told me something darker was happening. I called my brother, Noah Harper, a former cop who now runs a small security firm in St. Paul. He listened without surprise and said only one thing: "He's left a trail. We just have to follow it." Noah was the first to help me break free from Ethan's invisible grip. He installed a home camera system under the excuse of upgrading security. Ethan loved the idea, of course. He was obsessed with appearances, and in his mind, a wealthy man's house had to have the best of everything. What he didn't know was those cameras were recording more than he ever imagined. The next step required an expert. That's where Sofia Ramirez came in, a forensic accountant known for handling financial abuse in marriages. I met her for the first time at a small cafe near Lake Calhoun. She brought her laptop, open spreadsheets full of numbers and patterns. Within weeks, Sofia had uncovered offshore accounts and dozens of shady transactions. "He's not just hiding money," she said firmly. "He's planning to cut you off completely. When the time comes, you'll have nothing." Hearing that made my chest tighten. But instead of despair, I felt determination building inside me. If Ethan was planning something, then I'd have a plan too. To make it airtight, I needed a ruthless lawyer. That was Lauren Bennett, a divorce attorney who'd made plenty of rich husbands crumble during their very first hearing. I remember walking into her office for the first time, surrounded by shelves packed with files. She listened, then nodded. "Clara, I won't just help you leave him. I'll help you take back everything that's yours and more." From that day, we rehearsed the script. Every little detail was calculated. If Ethan abandoned me somewhere remote, I'd pretend to panic, but keep my phone recording. When I came back, I'd have evidence for court, timed with Sofia's financial report. Noah arranged a hotel under my birth named Clara Harper, so I'd have a safe place, with witnesses who could confirm I'd truly been left behind. Lauren set the paperwork to be filed the very next morning, leaving Ethan no chance to recover. Each of us had a role, like chess pieces in a game Ethan didn't even know he was playing. I practiced recording conversations without my voice shaking. I trained myself to keep a calm face, even when he tried to humiliate me. I packed a small bag hidden at the hotel clothes, a credit card of my own, and a notebook where I wrote down every way he'd tried to control me. A reminder of who I really was. We even ran drills. Noah drove me out to empty rest stops, teaching me how to stay steady, how to wait for the signal, how to walk forward like I wasn't afraid. Every practice felt like breaking one more chain inside me. Ethan thought he was writing a lesson for me. But in truth, I had been writing a different script all along, a script where he'd be dragged into the light. And that stormy night at the rest stop, it was just the opening act. When that Minnesota night swallowed the sky, I knew I had the last piece. But what Sophia and Noah showed me over the past months is what really stunned me. It all started with bank statements Sophia dug up. She sat across from me in her small Lake Calhoun apartment, laptop open, fingers tapping over a spreadsheet full of numbers. "Clara, this isn't just marital savings being siphoned off," she said, steady. "He's moved hundreds of thousands into offshore accounts, from the Cayman Islands to Panama." I remember staring at the screen, my heart racing. For years I trusted Ethan to manage our finances because he seemed better at it. It turned out his competence was just a cover for a plan to leave me with nothing. That wasn't all. Noah showed me footage from a hidden camera in our living room. Ethan and Isabella Cruz, his young assistant, sitting on our sofa. She was wearing the silk robe I wore on our honeymoon in Charleston. Their laughter echoed through the room I'd called home. "He lied about meeting a client," Noah said through his teeth. "While he was here, he stopped, couldn't finish." I saw enough on the screen to feel ice crawl down my spine. That wound wasn't healed when Sophia put another folder in front of me. Inside were notes about my sister, Rachel Harper. Rachel had struggled with gambling in Las Vegas, and I'd helped her pay debts more than once. Ethan found that weakness and used it. He paid Rachel's debts, and in return Rachel gave him details about our family assets, even our mother's health. I remember Sophia whispering, "He's exploiting your sister to squeeze out details about the inheritance." I went numb. The betrayal wasn't just from my husband. It was from family too. I barely slept that night. Ethan's cruelty went further than I imagined. In another report, Sophia listed elderly clients Ethan managed. One was Eleanor Hartley, 78, widowed, who'd put her retirement savings entirely under Ethan's care. In a recording, he mocked her to Isabella. "She thinks she's losing her mind. It's easy. I just remind her she forgot to sign the power of attorney, and that's it." Hearing that tightened my stomach. Ethan wasn't just betraying our marriage. He was a predator picking on the most vulnerable old people who trusted him. Noah couldn't hide his anger. "Clara, this isn't marriage stuff anymore. This is a crime. He can ruin dozens of families." Meanwhile, my lawyer Lauren Bennett was putting the pieces into a legal file. I sat in her office as the desk lamp threw warm light over a stack of papers. "We have it all," she said. "The recording of him abandoning you. Proof of the affair. Offshore accounts. And evidence he preyed on elderly clients. Tomorrow morning I'll file an emergency petition. He won't have time to react." I remember looking at the three of them, Noah, Sophia, Lauren, talking strategy. I felt my nose sting with tears. 8 months ago, I was a lonely wife, so controlled by my husband I didn't dare speak up. Now I sat in a room filled with people who believed me and were fighting for me. Most important, I believed in myself again. That night, rain tapping the window, I opened my little notebook and wrote one line. "Tomorrow he'll learn the cost of cruelty. And this time I won't stay silent." The next morning, Minneapolis was soaked in gray drizzle. Trees along the street drooped heavy with rain, like even they felt the weight of the day. I put on my new navy suit, adjusted the slim tie at my collar. This wasn't just courtroom attire. This was my armor. Courtroom 4B at Hennepin County was cold, lined with dark wood and long benches that forced everyone to sit straight. I walked in with my lawyer, Lauren Bennett, and Noah by my side. My heart raced, but my steps were steady. Ethan was already there. He sat at the defense table, suit wrinkled, hair a mess. Beside him was Richard Blackwood, a veteran attorney known as a shark in Minneapolis. I'd never seen Ethan look so small. When our eyes met, I saw anger mixed with fear, a man realizing his throne was crumbling. "All rise," the bailiff called out. Judge Patricia Coleman entered, her black robe sweeping behind her. She was known for being tough, especially in family financial abuse cases. Lauren started. "Your Honor, last night Ethan Mitchell abandoned his wife at a deserted rest stop, 37 miles from home, during an approaching storm. The judge looked up, sharp eyes behind her glasses. "Do you have proof?" Lauren nodded and pressed play on a small speaker. Ethan's voice filled the room, cold and clear. "You need a lesson. Walk home. Maybe the miles will teach you who really manages the money in this family." The whole courtroom gasped. People in the gallery turned, whispering. Ethan went pale. Blackwood bent down, whispering frantically. Lauren pressed on. "We also have evidence Mr. Mitchell opened multiple offshore accounts, transferring over $8 million without his wife's consent. In addition, he embezzled $3.2 million from an investment fund." Blackwood shot up. "Objection. These are one-sided allegations." But Lauren cut him off, her tone calm. She held up a thick file. "Please see exhibits A through F. Bank statements, wire transfers, all under the name of Ethan Mitchell." The air grew heavy. I watched Ethan's hands shake as he flipped through the pages. Judge Coleman tilted her head. "Mr. Mitchell, did you abandon your wife at that rest stop last night?" Ethan cleared his throat, trying to steady himself. "Your Honor, it was a misunderstanding. We argued. I thought she wanted space." "That's a yes or no question, Mr. Mitchell," the judge snapped. After a pause, he muttered, "Yes, but..." The room erupted. I felt like an invisible chain had just snapped free. And then the doors swung open. Isabella Cruz walked in, hair messy, expensive dress wrinkled. She looked straight at Ethan, her voice trembling but sharp with fury. "He's lying. He promised he'd divorce her to marry me. I have texts, I have photos, all proving he used fund money to keep this affair going." Every eye turned to Ethan. Blackwood paled, hiding his face. Lauren seized the moment, her voice like a blade. "Your Honor, we submit additional evidence. Luxury gifts worth tens of thousands of dollars Mr. Mitchell reported as insurance losses, but in fact gave to his mistress." The judge nodded. "Accepted. Entered into record." Ethan shot up, face red, shouting, "They set me up. You're all in this together." The gavel slammed hard. "Order." Judge Coleman thundered. "Mr. Mitchell, if you don't control yourself, I'll hold you in contempt of court." Ethan gritted his teeth and collapsed back into his chair. His glare found me, full of hate. Right then, the doors opened again. 2 federal agents entered with Tom Chen from the Securities and Exchange Commission. He addressed the judge. "Apologies for the interruption, Your Honor, but we have a warrant for the arrest of Ethan Mitchell on charges of financial fraud and embezzlement." This time, the courtroom exploded. Whispers, camera flashes popping from reporters in the back. Ethan froze, eyes darting like a trapped animal. Judge Coleman banged the gavel, restoring order. "We will continue this hearing, but the defendant Mitchell will remain in this courtroom until it's done." Lauren leaned toward me and whispered, "Everything's going exactly as planned." I drew a deep breath, feeling a strange mix of relief and chill. The man who left me in the storm last night now sat hunched in court, surrounded by evidence, witnesses, and the very people he once dismissed. This was the moment I had waited 8 long months for. And it was far harsher than any lesson he ever thought he'd teach me. That night, I sat alone in a small hotel room in downtown Minneapolis. The window was cracked open, drizzle tapping against the glass, catching the glow of the yellow streetlights outside. I was still in the same suit I'd worn to court, too drained to change out of it. My phone sat on the nightstand, screen flashing nonstop. Missed calls from Ethan, from his mother, from numbers I didn't recognize. I didn't pick up. Instead, I just sat there, listening to the rain and to my own heartbeat. For 3 years of marriage, I lived in constant apology. Every fight ended with me saying, "I'm sorry, it's my fault." Every insult I swallowed, telling myself to endure it for the sake of peace. Even when I caught him cheating, I still wondered if maybe I wasn't good enough. But tonight, standing in that courtroom, hearing Ethan stumble over his denials, watching him shrink under evidence he couldn't escape, I realized something. I was never the one who owed an apology. I was never the one at fault. I stood and faced the mirror on the wall. The woman staring back still had dark circles under her eyes from sleepless nights, hair still tangled from yesterday's storm. But beneath the exhaustion, I saw something else, a light I hadn't seen in years. The light of freedom. Ethan thought that when he left me at that deserted rest stop, I'd crumble, cry, and beg to come back. But that storm washed away every invisible chain he had ever wrapped around me. I was no longer Clara under his control, manipulated, reduced to a shadow in a man's world. I was Clara Mitchell, the woman who stood up to the one who tried to destroy her. I let out a soft laugh, even as tears slid down my cheeks. It wasn't bitter. It was the laugh of someone who finally understood the storm had passed, and a new sunrise was on its way. The following spring, when the snow melted and the trees along the Minneapolis lakes began to bud, I signed the lease for an old 3-story red brick building that used to be a law office. Big windows faced the street, the ceiling was high, and the old metal fans still hung above. No one thought this place would become a home for dozens of women who once felt as hopeless as I did. But that day, I signed my name, and the Phoenix Foundation was born. Noah, with his security background, was the first to walk the building. He pointed at each corner. "We'll need cameras here, but not the kind Ethan used. These will protect, not imprison." I looked at him, overwhelmed with gratitude. Sophia showed up with a van full of equipment, encrypted laptops, secure storage systems. "We're going to help other women track down every hidden dollar," she said. "No one should ever face shady bank statements alone again." Lauren dropped a stack of files on the conference table. "I'm starting a free legal clinic. Emergency filings, restraining orders, or even just a conversation about rights will be here." Our first case was Maria, an elementary school teacher. She came in pale, hands shaking around an old canvas bag. Her husband had hidden all their savings and threatened to report her as undocumented, even though Maria had been a U.S. citizen for years. As she broke down telling her story, I saw myself in her, the woman who thought there was no way out. But this time, I was the one across the table, sliding her a cup of hot tea and saying, "Maria, you're not alone. You're safe here." Weeks later, we uncovered her husband's secret accounts. Lauren filed the papers, and Noah moved Maria and her kids to a safe shelter. The day the court ruled in her favor, she hugged me and cried. In that moment, I knew the Phoenix Foundation had found its true purpose. Rachel, my sister, showed up one rainy afternoon. She'd been clean for 3 months and carried a box of donuts as an apology. "Let me help," she said, her voice shaking. I looked into her eyes and saw real remorse. She started by answering phones and taking notes. Little by little, she became the one coordinating our support group. When women called in panic, Rachel knew exactly how to listen. She understood what it felt like to be trapped in fear, and that truth made her a rock for others. Another day, the door opened, and Isabella walked in. She wasn't the polished other woman anymore, but a young woman in a plain shirt with short hair. "I know what I did was wrong," she said, eyes red. "But I want to tell my story so other girls don't fall into the same trap." From then on, Isabella spoke at colleges, warning students about the dangerous charm of powerful men, about how she'd been manipulated and lost herself. Every time I step into the Phoenix Foundation, I pause at the wall filled with photos. Smiling women holding their kids, standing in front of their new apartments, holding diplomas they once thought were out of reach. Each picture proves that pain can turn into strength, that betrayal can lead to rebirth. I'll never forget the day my mother, on one of her rare lucid afternoons, came to visit. She touched the photo of a woman who had just escaped an abusive marriage and whispered, "Your father used to say, the best revenge against cruelty is to turn it into kindness." Tears filled my eyes because I realized I was carrying out the very legacy he left behind. The Phoenix Foundation isn't just a shelter. It's proof that even when a woman is left in the middle of a storm, she can rise again, carrying the fire of her pain to light the way for others. A year after Ethan was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, I sat in my office on the 3rd floor of the Phoenix Foundation. Outside, rain drummed against the windows like a familiar rhythm. But this time, I wasn't trembling in the storm. I was steady, surrounded by the sound of keyboards clicking and the soft laughter of women who had just found their freedom again. On the wall behind my desk hung two things side by side. One was a certificate from the city of Minneapolis, honoring the foundation service to the community. Next to it was a framed letter, written in Ethan's messy handwriting from federal prison. The last line read, "I hope you've learned your lesson." Whenever someone asks about it, I just smile and say, yes, I did learn a lesson. I learned that when someone shows you who they really are through their cruelty, believe them. I learned that patience and planning can break years of control. And most of all, I learned the best answer to someone who tries to break you is to rise stronger than ever, then reach back and lift others up. In my desk drawer, I still keep the phone that recorded Ethan's words the night he left me in the storm. I don't play it anymore, but I don't delete it either. It reminds me that rainy night wasn't just the end of a marriage, it was the beginning of a whole new life. That afternoon, I walked down to the lobby, where a group of women waited. Among them was a young girl with a bruise on her wrist, her eyes filled with the same fear I once knew too well. I sat beside her and said softly, "You're safe now. You're not alone." Her eyes welled up, and I realized the circle had closed. The pain that once threatened to swallow me had become the strength I now passed on. Ethan once thought he was teaching me a lesson about knowing my place by leaving me in the rain. But the real lesson I learned was this: no one decides my place but me. As I left the office, I stood under the awning, watching the rain blur into a white curtain over the street. I breathed deep, letting the chill of the wind mix with the steady beat of my heart. And I smiled not for the past, but for the future. A future where the Phoenix Foundation would keep lighting the path for countless other women. That 37-mile stormy night had been my darkest hour. But from that darkness, I found the light. And now, every rainstorm reminds me of one truth: I am no longer the one left behind. I am the one standing tall, the shelter, the proof that from ashes the phoenix can rise again.